Hello and welcome to video 4 of Aspire's guide to using VLOOKUPs and if functions. In our previous videos we looked at using basic formatting to make spreadsheets more readable, understanding and using the operators for basic formulas, and using a sum function to add cells together. In this video we're going to be looking at a different type of function, and that is a lookup function to fetch information. Now, in our previous videos we said that functions are simply the names for more complicated formulas that Excel has already given us. In this context, VLOOKUP looks up information in a table for us, in the same way that someone might look up a bus timetable or a reference number in a catalogue. And we're going to see what that looks like in context. If you open up your risk assessment document, we can see that the next step is to input the risk rating. And the risk ratings can be found on a separate sheet, which is down at the bottom here. We can see we've got a small table that's got the number of risks, or the number of risk, and what that number corresponds to in terms of rating. 1 to 5 is a low rating, 6 to 10 is a moderate rating, etc. Now again, we could do all this manually. We could look up 5, click into the cell, type in low, go back, but again that's very labour intensive. We want Excel to do that for us. And so to do that we're going to use the VLOOKUP formula. What the VLOOKUP formula does is it reads down a table to find information for us, and then once it's found it, it reads across as long as we ask it to, until it gets to a cell that we've told it to stop at. In a way, you can think of it as having 3 steps. Step number 1, what should I look for? Step number 2, where should I look for it? Step number 3, what should I do when I find it? If we go into our risk assessment sheet, we can see what that looks like in context. I'm going to click into cell G5. I'm going to go up to my functions button, which is by a function bar. We can see that VLOOKUP is already here. If it wasn't, we could type it into the search bar. I'm going to double click. And here's the function arguments that are going to take us through our 3 steps. First of all, the lookup value is that step 1. What do you want me to go and look for? In this case, we want it to go and find whatever's in the risk score, which is this cell, F5. If I click into it, you can see that F5 has been inputted into the lookup value. We're asking Excel to go and find whatever's in F5 for us. The next step is where to look for it. If I click into the next box, which says table array, we're going to tell Excel where that information is. I'm going to click to ratings at the bottom here. I'm going to click into cell B2, hold my mouse down, and I'm going to drag until all of that table is highlighted. You can see in the arguments box, the table array says ratings B2 to C26. I want Excel to look for whatever's in F5 in ratings B2 to C26. Now, before I go into the next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to count how many columns are in the area that I've just highlighted. Now, we can see that there are 2 columns here. That is going to make sense as we move to the next step. When I click into the next step, Excel is automatically going to take us back to the previous sheet and ask us for the column index number, which is step 3, what should I do when I find it? So When Excel has found whatever's in F5, when it's found the risk score of 5 in the area that we've asked it to, what do we want it to do next? Well, next we want it to count across to the second column and give us whatever's there. So because the information that we want is in the second column that we highlighted in that area, we're going to put a number 2 for our column index number. If it was in the third column, we'd put 3. If it was in the fourth, we'd put 4th, etc. It's also very important to remember that that is the second column in the area that we highlighted and not the second area in the spreadsheet. Okay, with all those 3 steps, I'm going to press OK. And we can see that Excel has returned a risk rating of low. We can check to see if that's correct. Is 5 considered a low risk rating? We can read down to 5, we can read across, and we can see yes, 5 is a low rating. Now again, we could do this individually and manually for each one, or we could drag it down as we've done with our previous formulas. However, we might find that we get an error message if we do that. This is a common error message, and I'm going to show you how to get around that. In previous videos, when dragging down simple formulas, you can notice by clicking into different cells that Excel has automatically assumed that when we've asked it to times together D5 and E5, when we ask it to do the same in the row below, it wants us to do D8 and E8, D11, E11, D14, E14. When we drag that down, Excel automatically assumed that we wanted the numbers to change because we were dragging. However, when we're doing a VLOOKUP, we don't want these numbers to change because this table is staying where it is. It's fixed. It's not going anywhere. So we need to tell Excel that the area we want it to look at is staying put. As we can see that Excel has assumed when we dragged it down that we wanted these numbers to change, and we don't. So in order to tell Excel not to change the numbers that it's looking at, we click into the formula at the top here, and before each of the numbers and the letters we're going to put a dollar symbol. Now this can be found by holding down Shift and pressing the number 4 on your keyboard. I'm going to do $1 before B, $1 before 2, $1 before C, and $1 before 26. Now, if I click back into that cell and use my drag down, we can see that our error message has disappeared. If we click into individual cells, we can see that each of these numbers has stayed the same, B2 and C26 in each example. You may also notice here that moderate doesn't quite fit into the cell. To fix that, we can go up to between G and H until our mouse turns into 2 arrows pointing in opposite directions, and we can hold down and just drag to give it a little bit more space. So to recap, we've used a VLOOKUP function to look up some information and return it to us. We've used 3 steps. What should I look for? Where should I look for it? And what should I do when I find it? How many columns should I count across? We found VLOOKUP in the function button, and we also used dollar symbols to tell Excel that we didn't want these cells to change. We didn't want these numbers to change. This meets our fourth aim and objective. We've used a lookup function to fetch information, and that information was a risk rating.